The Below Average Joe's MMA show present the weekend preview. And
Yes.
we are previewing everything from UFC Orlando this Saturday, including Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland, and Bam Bam Bryan Barberena versus Rafael dos Anjos. Great fight night card there in Orlando. We're also talking about Conor McGregor being sued, and Paddy Pimblett's dog took a nasty shit. All this and more, and it all starts right now. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us, episode 253. I am one half of your hosting duo. My name is Noah Baker. The man to my right is the lovely, voluptuous Dominic Salee. Dominic, how are you doing on this Gruel Thursday?
I'm doing well, Noah. Thank you for asking, as you always do. It's got to be the most underrated part about Noah's personality is the constant care that he shows for myself. So I do appreciate it, Noah. I believe it's going to be a very good weekend. UFC Orlando, Florida, back in front of the crowd, which means we have a stacked fight night card to go over. Tons of ranked fighters, tons of fun fights. And we got a couple fun headlines as well, including some that talk about some dog doo-doo. It's going to be a good one, Noah. This last month of 2022, we're finishing strong. We're taking that momentum, and we're starting 2023 strong. I'm feeling myself today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Dominic. It's been a good day. Not for my internet. My internet is not doing very well. Hopefully, post production, it does not show, but I'm sure it will. But with that, Dominic, you know who never fails me?
Who would that be?
That'd be our friends over at PointsBet Sportsbook. They are the official betting partner of the Below Average Joe's MMA show. And they have a great offer for you, the listener, you, the viewer. Right now, if you sign up with PointsBet Sportsbook, they are going to match 100% of your initial deposit up to $2,000. There are two ways to make good on this offer. One, you follow the link, you sign up for PointsBet Sportsbook, you put in your deposit, it gets matched. Or you download the PointsBet app, and when you sign up, you have to use code MMA Joes at sign up, and you get the offer. I almost said discount. Not a discount. 100% match. It's free money, people. So please bet responsibly. And with that, Dominic, let's get into our main event of UFC Orlando. So happy I don't have to say UFC Vegas insert number here for
Oh, yeah.
like the 70th the damn time. But in our main event, Dominic, we will see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson take on Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland with one of the shortest retirements I've ever seen, and that is saying a lot in the sport of MMA because there are a lot of short retirements in this sport. But he is back. He is coming off that, of course, just crazy fight week with Hamzat Chimaev. He was originally scheduled to fight Daniel Rodriguez. Then after Hamzat came in like 8 pounds overweight for his fight with Nate Diaz, all of a sudden Kevin Holland was fighting Hamzat Chimaev, which is of course a touch up for him, and it looked every bit of that. While Wonderboy Thompson, Dom, is at one time former title challenger. He went to a draw in his first title fight at MSG against Tyron Woodley back in 2016, UFC 205. Feels so long ago. He was at one point in time one of the toughest fighters to really figure out in this division. He was so good in his striking and his movement, and he was really hard to take down. Very slippery is kind of how I would describe him. Um, he is older now, obviously. I believe he's 37, 38 years old. He's sort of coming towards the tail end of his career, and we're starting to see him slow a little bit. You know, performances against the likes of Bilal Muhammad. I understand Gilbert Burns also. Like, those are two of the top guys in the division. But I think when Stephen Thompson used to be one of the top guys in a division, I think that shows a little bit of regression. Now, I don't know if it's indicative that he is somehow washed and like not even a good fighter anymore. And we're really going to find that out, Dom, because he's ranked number 6 right now. He's going up against Kevin Holland, who's a very talented fighter, both very talented strikers. But this is the type of fight that if Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is still really good fighter or still top, maybe the second level of this division, this is a fight that he should win. But Dominic, Kevin Holland the favorite, so I think a lot of people buying into that regression on behalf of Stephen Thompson. Do you buy into that?
It's interesting, Noah, and really, it's interesting. This fight as a whole, the fact that this one came together is just a little odd to me. So you're gonna have to walk with me here a little bit because obviously we know that the bad matchups for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson are with these very good grapplers that can hold him down and not allow him to get off with his striking, right? Well, Kevin Holland, it's much the same. A very good grappler is his kryptonite. A Derek Brunson, a Vittori, and now a Hamzat Chimaev this past September, 2.5 months ago now. So, like, yeah, now we put two strikers together. It should be a really fun fight. But if it is all in the striking realm, there's not many people better in that realm, regardless of age, than Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So call me crazy, Noah. I'm a bit surprised that Kevin Holland is a minus 150 favorite. I know it's nothing too large, nothing too crazy or drastic, but I feel like this is a very, very coin flip fight to me, man. Like, I feel like overall, Kevin Holland probably still has a few more wrinkles because he is dangerous on the ground. I think he is underrated down there. Offensively, right? I mean, if he's not worried about a defensive threat in terms of wrestling from Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, maybe he can showcase that a little. But if you really had to force me to tell you how I think this fight's going to go, I see it on the feet for as long as it lasts. And I have a hard time giving Kevin Holland the upper hand going tit for tat with Stephen Thompson. So I kind of like Thompson as a dog in this fight. But am I going to bet on this fight? Absolutely not. I don't know who's going to win. I don't know how they're going to win. I don't know if it's going the distance, if it's getting finished. I know nothing about how this fight is going to play out. And that's why it makes me that much more invested and interested to see if Wonderboy still has it in him. Because Noah put it perfectly. This is the type of fight that he should win. And if he does, it kind of shows he's still got gas in the tank. And for Holland, he's essentially getting rewarded here because he's getting a top 6 opponent, and it is in his favor in terms of the style. So there's a lot of things I have my eye on here, Noah. Hopefully I didn't take away from anything you wanted to add on. I kind of rambled there, but you had to be with me.
Oh, I was with you 100%, and I do that I will not be betting on that fight, but that's because I am suspended from betting MMA until further notice.
Right.
Check out last episode if you'd like to learn why that is. But to keep going on this fight specifically, I think the reason that Kevin Holland comes in a slight favorite, minus 150, all these odds, by the way, from PointsBet Sportsbook, but I think the big reason for that is a mixture of factors here. Yes, Stephen Thompson, tit for tat, is the much more technical striker. But you look at the relative youth in comparison of Kevin Holland, the size advantage of Kevin Holland, the power advantage of Kevin Holland, and while I can't necessarily say he has a speed advantage, I do believe that that youthful vigor sort of gives him a little bit of twitch that Stephen Thompson used to be the absolute king of having, that maybe is starting to slow down a little. The shots that he used to be able to avoid ever so slightly, Kevin Holland's, or excuse me, Stephen Thompson has always been one of those guys who he doesn't have like a real high guard or whatever when he's in the pocket. He leaves his chin out there, he leaves his head out there, but his movement's so good, he's able to just get out of range of those shots. But as he gets older, gets a little slower. The shots he used to be able to avoid with ease all of a sudden start landing. And it's not like Stephen Thompson necessarily had a granite chin, but a good chin. He's been in real back and forth wars. Tyron Woodley cracked him in that first title fight. and he was able to come back and win rounds later. So, but the chin, it'll go. He got knocked out cold against Anthony Pettis. As you get older, more damage adds on. The Jeff Neal fight, that was a great performance by him. But even the few shots that Jeff Neal landed clean, you could tell had pretty big in him. And that's really what this comes down to, Dom, is, you know, I feel like Kevin Holland's going to be looking for the big shot here, and that's probably the right call. Normally you would say no. Normally you would say you need to have a better game plan than that. In this case, I feel like that's his route here. If you're not going to out wrestle, you're not going to. I don't see Kevin Holland, even though he might have been working on his wrestling a lot. He's got a good size advantage. I don't think he's going to look to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
And even if he were to, Thompson got such good takedown defense. Gilbert Burns and Bilal Muhammad are a much different level of wrestling than Kevin Holland is. So if this fight remains standing, Kevin Holland has to use those advantages, the power, the size, to finish this fight. That's what I bank on. Stephen Thompson can go 25 minutes of in and out of the pocket, landing good jabs, good shots, but it only takes one to put him out. And I think that's kind of what these odds are banking on a little bit, mixed in with the fact that Stephen Thompson is getting older, looking like he's slowing down a little bit. It looks like it could be a good matchup for Holland to come in, get a win over a big name, a guy who has fought, who is still ranked in the top 6, but maybe isn't at that level anymore. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think we'll see, because this is a lot different style matchup than what we've seen Wonderboy fight through the last couple fights he's been in. But yeah, that's really what it comes down to here. I do agree with you. I look at it as a bit of a coin flip fight, but in some ways, I could see this fight going a bit like how the PFL Championships had the Moraes squared, Marlon Moraes versus Shaman Moraes. Stylistically, Marlon Moraes looked incredible for 2 rounds. He looked great.
Yeah.
And then beginning of round 3, Shaman Moraes lands a crazy punch, knocks him out. That's what I could see happening here. I could see it's 5 rounds too. We're about 3. So Wonderboy's got to be able to be on his bike, be perfect, be out of the pocket, just enough shots, but without taking anything too big for 25 minutes. Can do it? He can. He's done it before, but he's also been on the receiving end of some pretty nasty shots in his past as well. So I'm very intrigued by it for sure, because this could be a massive moment for Kevin Holland, Dom. We know he's kind of got a name for himself at this point, but he kind of failed to cash in on building that name a little over a year ago when he was fighting in main events against Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori. Those did not go his way. Now he's moved down to 70 pounds, which I think was a good move. Not just be a character in this sport, but to be a legitimate and I think that there is a good chance that he could win this fight.
Yeah, for Kevin too, he is just now entering his prime. I agree with Noah that it does make sense for him to come to 170. I just think it fits his frame better. But he still is going to be bigger than a lot of these guys. He is significantly bigger than Wonderboy. I'll be curious to see when they're face to face in the cage. And Noah too, do you kind of see that point, or like I guess I never even asked you this when this was made, but what do you make of this fight just being booked in general? Kevin Holland kind of saved a pay-per-view in a sense, right? With Hamzat stepping in on a day's notice to do that. Do you feel like him getting a crack here at number 6, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and being that it is a favorable, and again, quote unquote, there's no easy fights there in the UFC, I get it, but a more favorable matchup, do you just feel like they're kind of giving him that chance because of what he did UFC 279 fight week? I'm curious.
I don't necessarily view this as a favorable matchup for him. It could be but we're kind of, at least for me, I'm kind of projecting that Wonderboy could slow down a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
The matchups Wonderboy had been fighting over the last year or so aren't necessarily reflective of how he could perform here against Kevin Holland. But I get what you're saying. You're kind of talking about, the place that Wonderboy's at in his career, the age, the losses starting to pile up a little bit. The ranking's still pretty high. It feels like a big moment for Kevin Holland. And yes, I think 100% the UFC are rewarding Kevin Holland for what he did. I wish they would do that with Li Jingliang, but they did not do that. They took him out of the rankings. So, but I don't think, just because Kevin Holland lost to Hamza and it wasn't particularly close, I don't think that means that he shouldn't get this fight here with the number 6 ranked guy in the division. I honestly could care less how he looked in that Hamza fight. It was all so last second and already a bad matchup. I mean, it's too many factors that don't really tell the full picture there. So I like this fight. I think it's a great main event. I think it's going to be an exciting. I think it'll be interesting to see how they interact. Wonder Boy, one of the nicest guys in the world. Kevin Holland, a very nice guy who also keeps our streets clean and is about that motherfucking life. So it'll be interesting to see how they get. Will there be some interactions in the cage? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out.
Absolutely. I agree.
So let's move on to a couple headlines here, Dominic, and we will get into more of UFC Orlando in just a bit. But I'm actually going to flip the order of these. So we'll start with the one that's been out for a little bit. Paddy Pimblett, the doorbell camera. Paddy Pimblett appeared to be walking his dog on a dark evening. The days they be ending so quick nowadays. It's probably like 4 p.m. when this was being filmed. Who knows? But he comes up to the door, and the lady who is talking to him through the doorbell camera, she's actually not home. She's like 5 minutes away. And Paddy Pimblett essentially tells her that his dog took a nasty shit in her yard, and he can't even pick it up with the bag. So he was basically asking for some water. And she's pretty starstruck, says, "Don't worry about it. I'll clean it up and whatnot." So, Dominic, when you saw this video, does this just add something to kind of the star that is Paddy Pimblett? Like, even a little monotonous video like this could blow up, and now all of a sudden it's got like over 6 million views online.
Yeah, it absolutely just adds to the star power of this guy. He is just such an awesome personality. And it's funny because it came off just that, again, I told Noah this off recording. This is my favorite MMA video of 2022. The exact quote, I have to say it one time. I'm not going to try and do the accent because I can't. I'm not a Scouser. But I'm going to say the quote. He said,
"He's just had the proper sloppy shit and I can't even pick it up with a poo bag," know what I mean?
That is what he said his dog did in her yard. And I just think that is the funniest thing in the world. But it's a genuine act of kindness that he would go to this person's doorstep and say, "Hey, do you mind if I clean this off really fast?" So it absolutely adds to his character. Like Noah said, 6 million views on Twitter, which is just mind-boggling stuff. A Barstool athlete. He's fighting in a co-main event slot now here in a couple weeks' time. The dude's a massive star, Noah, and potentially only going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, that's very true. Obviously, he's going to have to win, keep winning to hold up with that. Just the kind of head of steam that this guy's built for himself in such a short amount of time. It's been just over a year since he first debuted in the UFC. It's pretty incredible. I mean, I'm a pretty big Barstool fan. I watch a lot of their content, and I mean, he is, they've definitely played a part, but I mean, he is just so electric on his own. Like, really, Barstool's just kind of along for the ride. Like, he's kind of doing it himself, man. He is really that guy. So if he can keep winning, and I hope he does, I know I've had my takes on here about what I think his ceiling could be, but I'm not rooting against him. I'm obviously I'd like to see him really make good on the kind of promise that people think that he has. So I just thought it was a funny video. Thought we'd talk about it. The second one though, Dom, this one, it kind of hurts me a little bit, even though I'm not some huge Conor McGregor stan or whatever, but it hurts me a little bit because basically what's happened is Artem Lobov is suing Conor McGregor, and I believe the whole source of this lawsuit is Artem has said and claimed that he essentially gave Conor McGregor the idea for Proper 12 whiskey, and did not receive really any sort of financial benefit from it. The accusation being that basically Conor took his idea and made it $1 billion industry, and then he never got a dime of it. So this hurts me a little bit, Dom, because these are two guys that were like brothers at one time.
Yes.
You saw, I mean, the whole root of the Khabib-Conor war of words that has spanned years comes from the fact that Artem had some choice words about Khabib. Khabib cornered him backstage, had some of his boys around him, kind of talked him, what do you call it? Like undressed him with his words a little bit, like kind of talked some shit, threatened him a little bit. Conor flies across the country, and that's when the whole Brooklyn UFC 223 fight week stuff happens with the dolly and the bus. That's what Conor was willing to do for his friend Artem Lobov. And now, a few years later, they're going to be in court. It hurts me a little bit because, Dom, I just imagine me and you like in these shoes. Like, we do anything for each other. But this idea that somehow if our podcast blew up and we were making millions of dollars, that, I just could never... the one of us being like suing the other for lost profits or whatever, I would hate it. Just hurts me a little bit, the idea that could happen to people that were so close.
Yeah, not a great time to play You've Got a Friend in Me, that's for sure. I mean, did you see also Conor McGregor? He always does these little Twitter voice.
Those Twitter voice chat videos, whatever you want to call them, they are some of the funniest videos. Like, I swear he's right up on the mic. Like, he's just like
it's in his
right
mouth.
Up on it. Yeah.
And I just envision him like laying on his yacht, like a bottle of Proper 12 in hand, and he's just talking into the mic. And he called for Artem to meet him at the gym that they train at and settle it last night. And obviously we've not seen anything since. He put that tweet out overnight because they're like 5 hours ahead of us. So we were asleep when this got posted. So that's what I woke up to today. It's just a shame. I hope something legally can work out between these two, but you just hate to see it. Two friends, two brothers that have been through this fight game together, or in each other's corners for fights and this and that, traveling the world. And here we are now. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come, to be honest. It's fun. I feel like it kind of just, you heard a little bit like last week, just really tiny snippet. But then when Conor made that video today, you saw more things come out. So now it's probably just going to keep coming out in the coming weeks, I would imagine.
I remember a while back, I think Artem had done an interview with somebody, and this was before they'd appeared. Like, everybody still thought they were like brothers, like real tight. Mm. And I believe when Artem did this interview, he mentioned, I don't even know if it was a video interview or if this was just for like some sort of article, or if it was all written word or what. I think what I saw was just like a transcript, like written word from an article or something. So I'm not sure if that's the source, but where he said that he gave Conor the idea of Proper 12, and that Conor had tried to give him like some sum of money as like kind of a thank you, and that he rejected it. Mm-hmm. And I remember at the time, everybody that kind of was tweeting about it was talking about, man, what a guy Artem is. What a brother, that he basically made Conor from a millionaire to a billionaire, which, I mean, first world problems, right? Like, oh, what an underdog story, going from a millionaire to a billionaire. But no, I know Conor's roots go further than that. Don't attack me in the comments. But like, they were just saying like how, humble and just, I guess, I don't know how humble the guy was to not accept, the money, like just that he almost gifted the idea. That was sort of what everybody thought. And here we are months later, and it turns out, I guess that's not really the case at all. It just kind of shows how the perspective can change, like based off what we thought we knew at the time versus what we're sort of finding out now. Is like, oh, he probably turned it down because it was probably slap in the face, small amount of money. This is all, I'm not accusing Conor or anybody of anything. I'm just saying according to Artem's story, I guess, he probably just thought it was a slap in the face. It was probably some small amount of money to him, and he turned it down, and is now going to sue him. And it's just funny how much that the same story from months ago,
Yes.
but now the logistics behind it have changed massively.
Yeah, a complete 180 for sure.
Well, that's it for the headlines, Dom. Let's move into the rest of UFC Orlando, your co-main event.
Whew.
Dominic mentioned this off recording. There is 2 Bam Bams on this card, and the co-main features Bam Bam Bryan Barberena taking on Rafael dos Anjos. RDA moving back to welterweight. It appears that after RDA's last loss to who did he lose to? It was Rafael Fiziev.
Yep.
Yeah. So when he lost that fight, it seemed like RDA had sort of accepted the fact that, a future title shot may just be out of reach for him. And at this point, he just kind of wants the big fights that he can get, the bigger money fights that he can get. Well, Bryan Barberena this past summer had a pretty awesome fight with Robbie Lawler, my hero and yours. And Robbie Lawler looked great early, but then Barberena just laid it on him and finished him. And now he's sort of riding a wave here.
Mm-hmm.
And Dominic, you mentioned off recording RDA, the biggest favorite on the card. And I want to know, because you kind of made your thoughts clear off recording, but I do want to know, why do you think that RDA being that high of a favorite is just a bit too much?
I think the main factor in my head automatically goes to he's back to 170 pounds. I just feel like Bryan Barberena is really coming into his all right now. He's going to be a much bigger man, filling out wise at 170. RDA is 38 years old at this point, so it almost feels like he's in a, like Noah kind of alluded to, he knows that there's no title shots now in his future, so what can I kind of do big fight wise? And while this isn't like some minuscule fight, I mean, it's a co-main event here with fans and whatnot, but it is Bryan Barberena. So I don't know. I get weird vibes around this fight. And I just feel like the way that Bryan's looked in his past three wins in a row, he's coming off of the finish over Robbie, had a great fight with Matt Brown. And yes, that one was close. So, but I don't know, man. There's something about this momentum, pairing that with a plus 400 against a man in RDA who left the 170-pound division a couple years back on a negative note. He was on a losing streak at that division. I know that he's gonna, or at least people are calling for him to grapple, and that's what should get him an easy win, quote unquote, against Bryan. I just think it's a little bit easier said than done in this matchup. Like, this is another one where at the beginning of the week, I'm like, okay, yeah, RDA, Bryan Barberena, there's levels to this game, regardless of weight class. Let's put him on a parlay. Now we're here Wednesday. This comes out on Thursday. I want nothing to do with it. I am like, for those betting on this fight, I'd be cautious. And I could be completely wrong. It could blow up in my face. RDA could ragdoll Bryan. I just don't see it happening. I think Bryan Barberena is a severely live dog. I think he's severely underrated in this type of matchup here, Noah. I really do.
So I've been thinking about it this week off recording up to this moment, kind of how I felt about it. I was a little surprised when I saw it was minus 500. And now I think I agree with it. I think I do. I think I agree with the line. Big reason. You made good points about the welterweight was not a division that RDA looked super comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed undersized. Just didn't seem to be the weight class that fit him best. When I think of Bryan Barberena's skill set, he is completely outmatched skills for skill with RDA. I may be underrating Barberena when I say that, because he does keep getting these wins where we kind of think he'll slip up. But I believe skill for skill, technique, RDA is the much more technical fighter, the much more skilled fighter.
Yeah.
However, that is not the way Bryan Barberena wins this fight.
Yeah.
Bryan Barberena wins this fight by outlasting you, not by being a better mixed martial artist or whatever you want to call it, not by showing pulling some rabbit out of the hat and doing some crazy submission or crazy knockout punch or whatever. He simply can take more punishment than almost anybody else on that roster. So he just outwills you. That's what happened with Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler's a durable guy, man. I mean, this is the guy who fucking he had 3 back-to-back fights of the year back in his heyday. And even now that he's not the same guy, he's been finished. I know Ben Askren finished him, but that one was kind of a weird one. But before that, Tyron Woodley knocked him out. I mean, really, outside of that, I'm pretty sure it's been all decisions, even in the losses. So for Robbie Lawler, who is a more skilled fighter, to just be piecing up Barberena, looking good, the boxing looking crisp, the defense on point, but then Barberena he kept eating it, and landing some good shots, hard shots, finding his openings when he could. And Lawler slowed. He almost slowed down, like tired himself out by punching Barberena so much.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately how Barberena just outwilled him. He just wanted it more by the end. He was willing to go a step further than Robbie Lawler was. That would be his route to victory here. But I have to say I agree with the odds simply because when I look at like Matt Brown's fight with Bryan Barberena, if you remember, Dom, that was a great fight. You know, we were in Columbus. We got to see it live. Barberena got the win. There was a lot of boos. We didn't like that. But the one thing that stuck out to me that Matt Brown did very well was he took down Barberena at will. He didn't do it a ton because ultimately that fight was fought a lot on the feet. But every time he went for a takedown on Barberena, it was easy. Easy.
Yeah.
So for RDA, a much more skilled grappler to come in here, and even with the size disadvantage, I feel like that takedown is going to be there all day for him. Especially if Barberena does what he tries to do with like Robbie, where he kind of puts him up against the cage, tries to pressure him, get in his face. I mean, if you put RDA up against the fence, he is going to shoot. And yes, maybe it'll be a little telegraphed in the later rounds, but I think that this is RDA's fight to lose. I think Bryan Barberena is an awesome guy to watch. He seems like a good guy, family man. You know, he's been in a lot of really fun fights over the years. I remember the Vicente Luque fight back in the really early days of the ESPN. But I think this fight will look similar to what RDA did to Renato Moicano earlier this year. I really do.
Yeah, and I do want to add one more thing that sides with Noah and goes against everything I said at the beginning of this fight, but Noah put it in my brain. When he said that Bryan outlasts his opponents, and that's how he gets these wins in these dogfight wars, how often do we see RDA get outworked and outwilled? Because he's usually the guy doing that as well to his opponent. So it's like a battle of wills in this fight. If it stays on the feet, they could trade tit for tat. Who knows? But if RDA can get the takedowns, that's where I really do see the biggest threat. So it's going to be interesting. I'll say if Bryan can pull this one off, wow. Because you know how Dana feels and how we feel. You know, if you beat RDA, regardless of where he is, it does say a lot.
I would have to agree. I would have to apologize to him for underrating him so much on this episode, just because I think he's a good fighter. But RDA is a much better, more skilled fighter at this point in his career than Robbie Lawler is. And I'll admit, Dom, when you said, you know, who outworks RDA, right? Well, for Robbie Lawler, yes, Robbie had some bad losses, you know, over the last few years, the Neil Magny fight, and even the fight against RDA and Colby Covington. But he never quit. His spirit was never broken. He was never, you know, in any firefight he had ever been in. He had never really, he'd been caught, he'd been finished, but it had never been like a broken spirit. That's what it felt like when Barberena finished him by simply landing a ton of volume and just having more left in him. It felt like Robbie was just straight up like, this is crazy. I can't outlast this guy. So I will say the only thing I'll say in response in your favor 'Cause
Okay,
I don't
I
think
see what we're
anybody would
doing.
have thought. Yeah, now this is kind of weird, right? But I think nobody would have thought going into that Lawler fight like that Barberena could outlast him, outwill him, outwork him, and it happened. Now this is
Yeah.
a step up for sure. RDA had more left in the tank in 2019 or 2018 when they fought him and Lawler. He definitely has more left in the tank now, but just saying like that could be just that could be an aspect that we're gonna find out Saturday. That maybe Bryan Barberena is just that fucking dude who just can outlast anybody, even the toughest of tough guys in this UFC. So next fight here, we're going to the men's flyweight division. Matheus Nicolau taking on Matt Schnell, number 7 versus number 8. I think there's a lot more interest in the Matt Schnell side of this fight. Of course, Schnell really made a name for himself over the summer with his fight of the year contender with Sue Maderji, a back and forth war, a war of nutrition. I mean, gee, those guys, that fight looked like it was over like 6 or 7 times. Schnell with the comeback victory. It was brutal. It was awesome. It was just a beautiful chaos.
Yes.
Matheus Nicolau, a much more under the radar guy, hasn't had that moment where he's gotten a chance to really shine. Nicolau, pretty heavy favorite coming in here. Now, what I said in response, because I could tell Dom was pretty surprised by that, is in this sport, we talk about it so much. It's so easy to go into a fight and say, or everybody says you're only as good as your last fight. That's so often what we see, what we talk about. The last fight really shapes your perspective of a fighter, Not what they did a few fights prior, it's always in the moment. What was their last performance? That you can't help it. It's human nature. It's the last thing you saw them do. If they didn't look good, you might be a little bit skeptical that they'll look good in their next fight.
Yeah.
Matt Schnell had that awesome come from behind victory, comeback. It was a war, fight of the year. Felt like, man, I could really get behind a guy like Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell's a good fighter. I don't think he should be this much of an underdog against Nicolau. But we have to look at the whole body of work and see, for one, that fight, can Matt Schnell do that again? Where if he's in a fight like that he had with Maderji, can he really take those kind of shots again and come out on top? Maybe, but Nicolau, maybe not that guy. But you look at the full resume, Schnell has had his ups and downs in the UFC. Here with Nicolau, I do think that paints a more full picture of Matt Schnell, fun fighter, good fighter, but can he get over that hump and be great? That's the answer. He had a great moment, but can he put together a great 100% performance here against a guy in Nicolau who maybe has gone under the radar so much due to his consistency? I'm going to allow you to have the floor here and answer that question, Dom.
Well, I was just going to say, you posed a good question on what we need to see from Matt Schnell, or like if he can do those things. So really my question is about Matheus Nicolau, because you mentioned how he is underrated, and he is. He's on a 5-fight win streak. The last 4 are by decision. The problem is I don't think people really care to go out of their way and watch Matheus Nicolau fight. I mean, you saw the response he got when we were in Columbus. They were booing that fight like crazy after the first few minutes, and then it didn't stop throughout the remainder of the fight. He's a very smart fighter. He has a very good fight IQ. He stays out of danger. But maybe he kind of needs that one performance where he really does show us something we haven't seen to put himself into that top 5. I mean, no, if he beats Matt Schnell here, we're talking Matheus Nicolau 1 win away potentially from a title shot right now. But he's got to do something to put his name in the hat with all these other guys, because all these other dudes in the top 5 are doing things to make names for themselves. Even guys outside of the top 10 like Manel Kopp, they're doing things that are getting people talking about them. you blink and you miss it. You have no idea Matheus Nicolau is number 6 in this division right now. So that's my question response for him, for the red corner of this fight.
I would say, yes, I agree that in order for him to even have a shot at getting a title shot, or for him to just even be relevant really in this flyweight division, he needs something like that. I mean, that's what worked for Matt Schnell. That before that fight, for God's sakes, on the very first appearance of him on this show, I called him Max for like 10 minutes and thought it was a bullet. That when I looked up Max Schnell, it was a Cars character from the movie, the Pixar movie, Cars. And I was saying what a travesty it was. And then Dom called me out in episode and said it's Matt, actually. So look at how far we've come.
Right.
To where now Matt Schnell feels like one of the most exciting guys in this flyweight division. But it was one fight that really set that into place. Nicolau can have something similar to that. But I would say don't expect it to come in this fight, because I can't think of a worse guy to test that out on and be like, let me try to get down and dirty and have me a fun brawl, than with the guy who literally came like the Undertaker from the depths of hell back and won the fight against Maderji. So that's why I would lean on the side of I could see this fight, a lot of excitement, and then Schnell maybe following up that performance with another fun one here. I could see Nicolau really slowing this fight down, doing what he does best, out just being very smart, avoiding danger, and winning a fight, kind of coasting to a victory. And then maybe the next fight, depending on who he's going after, whether it's Alex Perez or someone like that, then he might try to show a little bit more of that finishing capability, but not expected here.
Yeah, fair.
Next up, the other Bam Bam, Tuivasa. Get your shoes out, folks. Pour you a tall one and slug it down. He's taking on Sergei Pavlovich. This one shouldn't go long, right?
Well, I wouldn't expect it to. No, I'd love to see the numbers on the fight lines. I've not looked yet, but it's got to be insanely high. If you might have to bet under 0.5 rounds to get any sort of value out of this one, but it should be fun because, one, Tai Tuivasa has never been in a boring fight. 2, Sergei Pavlovich is a man that has won 4 straight fights, Noah, 4 via first round KO, TKO. He's a dangerous man. He had a long layoff, so people forgot about him, but he has reinserted himself in 2022 big time, and now he's getting the number 4 ranked man, one of the biggest name people in this division and in the UFC as a whole. If Sergei gets this win, he's going to put people on notice. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, with this win, he could really be knocking on the door for a title shot. I mean, there's a lot to work out in that title picture right now with John Jones and Ngannou being kind of, for like the 20th time, we're hearing that they're in talks for headlining a pay-per-view. Now it's March, UFC 285. Apparently, if Ngannou doesn't take that date, then Curtis Blades is going to be in that spot, which 2020 me is vindicated because I said that, and I had people tell me how dumb that was, that John Jones would never take a fight with Curtis Blades. Not Dom, but other people. But Stipe appears to be retired. I don't know. I mean, he did just lose his dad, so it's kind of up in the air. I'm sure he's just taking some time. There's a lot that has to be worked out. But my point is that Pavlovich, with a win over a name like Tuivasa, a guy who was so close himself to being in the title picture, you kind of have to wonder if Pavlovich wins this, like, what's there left for him to do before he gets the title shot, especially if he finishes Tuivasa like early here. I mean, what a statement that would be. You know, I kind of wonder for Tuivasa if he wins this fight. And this is more of a Monday topic, because, depending on if he wins, but you know, I kind of wonder what would be next for Tuivasa if he won this fight. If he came out here and knocked out Pavlovich, you know, what fight do you do? Because, you know, Curtis Blades is an option. Don't love that fight for Tuivasa, but you know, you kind of, once you're at the top, you kind of have to take on those matchups. But let's say John Jones and Curtis Blades is the fight that gets made, and Ngannou's out for a while. Do you run back him and Ciryl Gane? I mean, I wouldn't mind to see it again. I know Dominic said it was like the most effortless, 100% golden boy performance ever from Cyril Gane, but I thought it was a pretty fun fight to watch, competitive at points. But there's obviously always going to be options with a guy like Tuivasa, but you just kind of have to wonder, what's his path from here? Because Pavlovich seems to be the guy riding the momentum. He gets a win, knocking on the door. Can Tuivasa really say the same when he's just coming off a, knockout loss to Cyril Gane? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. He may, even with a win, like Noah said, maybe he just finds himself having to fight backwards one more time just because of how crowded it is at the top. And then if Sergei wins, it's huge. You catapult in. More fresh matchups, of course, for Sergei. So I guess maybe it's a little easier. Like you could put him with Gane or him with Blades, whatever works out up top. So I guess it is a little easier for him. It's going to be interesting. And it's just, I don't know, man. Bam Bam likes to bang. And Sergei proved that he's not afraid to bang. I mean, that's what he did with Derek Lewis when he got that win. So this is going to be a car wreck. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. Next one, Jack Hermansson taking on Roman Dolidze. This was, of course, a late shakeup to this card.
Yeah.
Who was originally in the spot with Jack?
It was Derek Brunson.
Yeah, Derek Brunson. That was going to be, of course, a very good fight on paper. Derek Brunson out, so Roman Dolidze getting a massive opportunity here. Yeah. And I'm not mad at it. Jack Hermansson he's been one of those guys that's kind of hard to figure out. I feel like when I project him to do really well, he underperforms. And then when I project him to do poorly, he overperforms. I feel like I've never really locked down Jack properly.
Yeah.
It seems like I'm always wrong about where he stands, what kind of performance we're going to get from him. So here against Roman Dolidze, good fighter, but unranked. I kind of expect Jack Hermansson to look really well here. Kind of like how he did a weird fight, but his fight with Chris Curtis where he looked great. I mean, pretty much shut out Chris Curtis, frustrated him to the point where Chris Curtis was, flipping him off and calling him a bitch and stuff. It was really nasty stuff. But this could be the kind of fight that Roman Dolidze comes in here and looks like a beast against Jack Hermansson. Jack just kind of has that capability where he almost feels like a guy who can beat anybody, but he can lose to anybody in this even more than any other fighter can.
Yeah, fantastic. Nailed it on the head. Roman, too, being that he's taking this on what is it, a week notice? It's less than 2 weeks notice that he's taking this fight. He's a big dude, and I just worry with the weight cut on short notice, you're going up against a very, very just is solid the best way to describe Jack Hermansson. Yeah, he's just such a solid fighter. Yeah. So if Dolidze can't come in and get another first round finish, which he can do, he's done it twice in a row this year. He just knocked out Phil Halls 1 month ago as of yesterday when we're recording this. But being all these factors, the short notice, the weight cut, Hermansson's going to look great through 3 rounds. We've seen him look great through 5 rounds. If it's not over early, Dolidze could be in for a wake-up call in terms of this is what it's like here in the top 10. That's what I fear could happen here in this fight. We'll see, though. If he gets a win against Jack Hermansson from out of left field, not even ranked, not even close to ranked, and comes in and does this, welcome aboard. We'll see what happens.
When you mention someone being solid, I think that's a good way to label Jack Hermansson, but it's not the same way I would normally label someone solid. Normally you'd label someone solid. They're kind of consistently good, not great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jack Hermansson is the least consistent guy ever. Yeah. He looks great or he looks bad. So we'll meet you in the middle and call him solid. That's Jack Hermansson, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Last fight, deeper on the prelims, but definitely a noteworthy fight here in the women's flyweight division. Tracy Cortez and Amanda Ribas, 2 of the young up-and-comers, bright young faces of this division. Amanda Ribas looking for her first win as a women's flyweight. She was very close to getting that against Caitlin Chukagian, one of the top dogs of this weight class. While Tracy Cortez had kind of a long layoff, but picked right back up where she left off in her last fight. The odds are really close on this one, Dom. Mm-hmm. And I know you're a big Amanda Ribas ride or dyer. I don't know what I just said there. Was that English? I don't know.
It is now.
How do you kind of break down this matchup? As an Amanda Ribas fan, you should know even more than most about what kind of style she brings to the table. But we know the elite skill set, if limited, but elite, that Tracy Cortez has. What does Amanda Ribas have to kind of counteract that?
That's the matchup here. This is a really great fight. I'm actually shocked it's buried so far down, but this is a deep card. It's whatever. I'll be watching. Amanda Ribas is very well-rounded. Solid on the feet, good on the ground, great jiu-jitsu, defensively sound. Marina Rodriguez fight excluded, but, she's got power, right? Tracy Cortez, not as well-rounded as a full, complete skill set, but she has the grappling. She has the wrestling. So I am siding with Ribas. Fan bias aside, I just feel like she has to eventually kind of take that next step because she's looked great in her fight so far. Her only 2 losses in the UFC are against Marina Rodriguez, who was a top 3, could have been fighting for a title, and then, of course, Chukagian, who everyone loses to, except for Manon Fior. She did break that spell.
Right.
So I just feel like if she, especially like she continues to stay at 125 when I don't feel like she needs to. She's number 9 in the world at strawweight, by the way, for those that forgot. But she's choosing to stay at 125 for some odd reason, where it's much deeper, much harder to get to a title, I feel like right now, in the back end of things anyway. In the back end. Tracy is just I think that if she can't get the takedowns as easy, and it's easier said than done, right? She's very good at this skill set. But I feel like Amanda is defensively sound enough to keep it on the feet. And even on the ground, she's very competent down there. And I'm not saying she should just go to her jiu-jitsu because that didn't work for Melissa Gatto. I learned my lesson in that fight, betting on Melissa Gatto. She kind of relied on her BJJ, and it didn't work. Ribas, I don't think, is going to make the same mistakes. I think the well-rounded, all-complete skill set will overcome that one-dimensional grappling of Tracy Cortez, unless Cortez has added some new wrinkles to her game. We shall see. But I'm sticking with that, Noah.
She's been working with boyfriend Bryan Ortega. Maybe some moves that was not intended to be a sexual joke, but I feel like it kind of came out of my mouth as a sexual joke. Sometimes you just can't help it. So
we get it. The MMA fans get where you were going with it.
Yeah. So, anyways, we'll move on to closing statements, Dom. It's a segment on the show. The only way we end the show. Me and Dominic can talk about anything and everything, MMA related or not. So we had a very contentious closing statement, so I think that's the word I'll use to describe it, on Monday. I'm going to go first.
Okay. It's usually better when you do.
Yeah, so, because Dominic, I always put him on the spot, and he's like, let me think. And he normally just says something about like, oh, man, things are good, and then he kind of finally stumbles into like some sort of food debate.
Yeah.
I'm simply, look, guys, as some of you may have heard on Monday's episode, I have suspended myself from MMA sports betting.
Yeah.
The only way I can be reinstated into the below average bet slip is for me to I'm going to place. I'm going to text Dom what my 3 bets of the card would be if I were to bet. And if I get all 3 right in consecutive weeks in a row, that's be 2 weeks in a row, then I can be reinstated. So essentially I have to go 6-0 over the course of 2 weeks.
Right.
I stand by this decision. Dominic supports me in this decision. I think I speak for everyone when I say it was not a hard decision. It was actually quite easy on my wallet. So it's so frustrating, Dom, when this is a sport. I literally have a podcast on it. I've studied it, watched it as much, if not more, than any of the other sports I love. And yet I do just fine when I bet NFL, college football, college basketball, soccer. I don't even watch soccer.
Yeah.
But the moment I go to bet on MMA, it just zilch, zero, nothing.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to air it out again, talk about it again. And also, there was some words shared about the whole no gravy versus gravy debate.
Oh,
And, there was a lot of people that gave their input. I got told that it was a L take. I was seeing that a lot. And my only response is that as a society, I think it's time that we stop judging others for their food preferences.
Huh.
I've never judged anybody for their food choices, and I think you all should follow my example and do that as well. So if you guys can start tweeting out hashtag thank you Noah, I will probably not respond because I'm better than you. But anyways, Dominic, your closing statement.
What a moment. What a moment that really was. I hate to end the episode on a Debbie Downer note, but I just spent that whole 5 minutes trying to think of one, and I have nothing, zilch, not a damn thing. I guess that's just a boring life right now, this kind of portion. I don't know, Noah, but I don't even have food to talk about. We'll get closer and closer to Christmas and some big things going on for us. I'll bring the fire. But no.
I'll ask you a question. So,
Okay.
We talked about video games a couple weeks ago, and you admitted that for the first time in like 13 years, no COD. I think it was 13. I think that's what you said.
Yep.
Now that I guess the new is it called Warzone is out?
Yeah.
Has that changed?
This controller has not been touched, actually, until right now. I couldn't tell you how long. So it's a shame, because what's weird, Noah, is that I still find myself watching streamers, Dr. Disrespect, shout out Noah's favorite, but other streamers, I'll watch them play, but I've had no inkling to go over here, press the power button, and sit down and play. It's just what an interesting moment. It hurts. It still hurts, but yeah. Still
I'm glad you brought up Mr. Disrespect because Dominic of course has a little poster in his room that he can fap off to every night when he stares at him. But here's the thing about Mr. Disrespect.
Doctor.
I don't love when people can't step away from their fucking characters. And that dude shows up everywhere in person, rocking the stash, the shades, the fucking headset. Like it's got to get so tiring. Like you gotta want to just let your hair down and just be Mr. Disrespect, or not Mr. Disrespect, be whatever his real name is.
Guy Beam.
Guy Beam. I'm sure he just wants to be Guy, every once in a while. Yeah. And also, he's like 6'8". He's a mammoth. I did not know that. But yet, he plays video games for a living. So, what a waste of that height. But my name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the below average Joes. And we'll see you guys on Monday.